Hey book people, this is the B-Side Book Reviews, and today we're going to look at Robin Wright's non-fiction entitled Sacred Rage, The Wrath of Militant Islam. Okay, now where did I find this book? Actually, I got this on a bargain shelf in Hastings. It was one of those bargain shelves they actually move outside the store. I can't remember what I paid for it. Couldn't have been much though. So anyway, get yourself something to drink, light a candle, and let's look at some rage. The Sacred Rage, the Wrath of a Militant Islam. That pretty much tells the entire story right there. There are some pretty angry people in this world, some being a whole lot more pissed off than others. And veteran journalist Robin Wright is here to give us the entire angry story of the Middle East. Although this book has been updated to the early 21st century, most of the accounts of the Sacred Rage takes place in the late 1970s and throughout the 1980s. And this rage stretches from the eastern reaches of Afghanistan all the way to the western shores of Morocco. Yes, there's a lot of danger and anger in these lands. And Robin tells us places we just might want to avoid while planning our next vacation. Airports where the locals are carrying signs that say, "Death to America," may not be your best spring break getaway plan. Yeah. Robin takes us through the days when Iran shafted its Shah and Ayatollah Khomeini took charge while becoming a bit of a rock star in certain parts of the Middle East. Apparently, his picture was posted around the Islamic world back in the late 70s as much as Andy Gibb posters were posted in teenage girls' bedrooms back in those days. Yes, we lived through the 1979 Iran hostage crisis again. Not to mention a few hijackings, kidnappings, and bombings, including the 1983 Beirut bombing of the U.S. Embassy, which killed 63. And the barracks bombing where over 200 American soldiers were killed. We also get to reminisce the Iraqi War and, of course, live through the World Trade Center nightmare all over again. Lots of rage here, folks. Lots of rage. This sacred rage is just not isolated to one area in the Middle East. So, Ms. Wright gives us a tour of the Islamic world as we check out the ruling royal family of Saudi Arabia and learn that royalty is a fading fad in the Muslim world. Now, according to Ayatollah Khomeini, Islam does not recognize monarchies and quotes the Quran by saying, "Kings despoil a country when they enter it and make the noblest of its people the meanest." Perhaps such a view is supported by observing how the riches from the Saudi oil fields tend to flow to new airports, armies, and of course palaces, rather than to social programs, schools, or health services. Then we stop in Egypt and dip into the 1981 assassination of Egypt's president Anwar Sadat, where several in Egypt claimed that the real assassin of Sadat had been the US, which had forced him to compromise Egypt. Now, for the actual assassins, well, they took their death sentence with joyous hearts, saying they would soon be with God. Yes, this can't wait to die martyr attitude seemed to be one of the most disturbing viewpoints revealed in this book. Our author reveals how death had become fashionably honorable in what the radicals called the war against Satan, while dishing out the quote, My bride, martyrdom, shall give birth to my son, freedom. Self-destruction by suicide terrorism seems to be the preferred death. Now, there's no mention of the 72 virgins awaiting these terrorists to have sacrificed their life for the cause, though. However, the book does tell about how a 15-year-old Iranian boy who was injured, and he sobbed bitterly to the Iraqi soldiers who held him because he did not die, and therefore God did not want him. Now, it's one thing to die nobly for God and country. It's a whole different thing to go into the game with death being your greatest desire. Now, if this book told me nothing else, it gave me a bit of a greater understanding of how these folks look at life. One quote went as far as to say that Islam is not a religion. Rather, it's a total identity combining politics and culture. And what about the mixing church and state? Former Saudi king, I think I'm saying this right, Faisal, once said there was no need for a constitution because the Quran is the oldest and most efficient constitution in the world. We don't forget about Afghanistan either, and Wright touches on the Soviet invasion, which, as most of us know, brought a few American dollars to the Afghanistan's war effort against the Soviets. Of course, it also attracted the attention of a certain guy named Osama bin Laden. And that takes us on into the 21st century. Yeah, lots of rage, but I'm not so sure how sacred it all is. I'm not sure how much enjoyment one gets from reading about how an entire race of people want to destroy you and your country. Okay, I'm pretty sure this does not include everybody in the Islamic world. Such a view is kind of like saying everyone who lives in the South is a member of the Ku Klux Klan, and we all know that's stupid. Of course, this book did make me a bit leery of booking any international flights. Yeah, the hijackers mentioned in the books weren't so gentle with the Americans. And the worst part about this book is the fact that I remember a lot of the acts of radical terrorism that took place. Yeah. Now, what I find interesting and a bit strange is that here in the US and other Christian countries, it's the young people who are kind of, turning their back on religion. However, in these Islamic countries, it's the youth who seem to be the most vivid about following their religion to the letter. As for the strict fundamental laws of the Taliban, I'm not sure if I would call it enjoyable reading. However, I could describe it as more gruesomely interesting, especially the part of how they would all gather at a sports stadium to hack off the hands of thieves with a machete. Naturally, if you're a feminist, reading of Taliban rule will be downright horrifying when discovering that a woman could be subjected to 100 lashes for the dreadful crime of walking or talking to a male who was not their husband. Or reading about the dangers women endured simply by walking around with all that head garb on where they could barely see. Yeah, I never really thought about that one. And heaven forbid, literally, that a woman is allowed to have a job or any type of formal education. However, they are fine with women begging. Begging. But doesn't this constitute them talking to men to whom they're not married? Under the Taliban, most aspects of modern life were outlawed. And this included things such as music, movies, Most books and sports, cards, board games, children's toys, dolls, and such sinful activities as flying kites. In their mind, time should be spent serving the country and praying to God. Okay, most of the enjoyment I got out of reading this book was enjoying the fact that I live where I live. And I can fly a kite anytime I want to. Go fly a kite. This book has been updated several times, and I'm not even sure if this is the newest revision. But it did get as far as the 9/11 attack on the Twin Towers back in 2001. There's a lot of rage to cover in just shy of 300 pages. However, the rage is well organized, with one chapter taking a look at the rage in Saudi Arabia, one chapter looking at the rage in Israel, and the rage and so on and so forth with all the rage. Now, I love the intro where our author, Robin, gives us a quote from her mother after Robin has covered her 9th war. Her mother simply says, "How marvelous to be in the middle of history." My mother's comments would be more on the order of, "Are you crazy? Why can't you work at Walmart like a normal person?" Now, that would be my mother. As terrifying as some of Robin Wright's accounts were, I can't help but say I found most of the book fascinating. However, after a few reports of terror and bombings and hijackings, and more terror and more bombings and more hijackings, well, they just all started sounding kind of alike and running a bit together. Then there's all the names that I could not pronounce, along with my very limited knowledge of the Quran. I did discover that the words Al-Qaeda is Arabic for the base. Perhaps that will help me if I ever find myself on a hijacked plane. However, my wife does know a few words of Arabic. But I'm not sure under what circumstances the sentence, "shove it up your ass sideways," will prove useful. Probably never going to be useful. That's my guess. Okay, so that was Sacred Rage. A lot of rage. Actually, I remember a lot of this stuff happening in this book, and I'm sure some other things have happened since this book was published. There might be some more chapters added, so I don't know. Now, it's about the wrath of militant Islam, not Islam, militant Islam. It's not slamming on any religion. As we all know, all different groups have their militant people, whether it be religion or politics or football fans. You know, the whole should not be judged by the acts of a few. So, no slamming on Islam or any kind of religion here. Just basically not slamming anybody. They're really just doing a report. So it's a journalist reporting. A book of reporting. So check it out. And if you're not into reading about rage, find a more kinder and gentler book. Just go read a book. It'll make you more peaceful.